So we're on to episode 6 of this alternate picking series, and if you haven't watched the previous 5 videos, I'd really recommend going back and doing that if you want to really improve your picking. In this one, we're going to be talking about 3-1-3 patterns. So a 3-1-3 pattern is exactly as it sounds. You play 3 notes on one string. In this case, I'm playing A string 5, 7, 8, 1 note on the next string, which is D string 7, and then 3 notes on the next string, which is going to be 5, 7, 9 on the G string. So if you just do that on repeat, that's hard enough as an exercise, and it really challenges you for 2 reasons. One, that's an odd repeat, so it starts on a downstroke and then the next repeat is an upstroke, etc., etc. So you're really having to reverse the pick stroke every single time. And secondly, you're really focusing on that string skip between G and A every repeat, which makes this pretty nasty. So you can do that on other strings. I can take that pretty much anywhere on the fretboard if I wanted to. Something like that, for example, as well. But doing that all over the fretboard in all of your 3 note per string positions, or even switching positions while you do it, is a great way of improving your alternate picking. You can also do that same pattern in reverse. So something like that. And again, that is a little bit more difficult than the previous one because you're having to do the string skip the other way, and also most people find playing down the neck like that a little bit more challenging when it comes to the alternate picking sequences. So give both of those a go as your first sort of attempt at these 3-1-3 patterns. Now there's tons of these. All we're after really is some way of a 3-1-3 pattern repeating in uneven groupings. So that means that we're getting an odd number of notes and we reverse the pick stroke on every single one. Really difficult to play against the metronome if they're very long, but don't worry about that. I would just really crack on with trying to make them odd anyway, just because it's better for the picking hand. So a good example of that would be which all I'm doing there is going 5, 7, 8, 7, and then this pattern on the G string, and then back down, and then repeating that whole thing. And that just repeats over and over again, and that's an odd numbered pattern, so every time you try that repeat, it's going to reverse the pick stroke and make you look like an idiot. And that's the whole point of these patterns. So we do that to start with. We're really trying to get those odd numbered patterns into our playing. You can always extend this, so you can do things like, and imagine I did a 3-1-3 pattern from there. So I could go, which again, that's going to reverse the pick stroke on this one. So we're going that first pattern, and then from here, you're going B string 8, and then E string 7, 8, 10, 7. So we get, and then going all the way back down. And then you repeat again here on an upstroke. Now, this is the kind of thing that I'm still practicing and still really trying to work out myself properly, but I'm finding these 3-1-3 patterns in reversing order like that really, really helpful for this picking hand, and tracking the strings properly because you're going across the whole string set, and then you're also just reversing the pick stroke and having to do some string skips in there. It's just all really nasty stuff. So this one is a really, really good one to start practicing, but there are other examples in this. Another example of this would be, let's say in that same key, starting on the 1 note, so going 1, 3, 1, 3. So then we go. All I'm doing there is taking fret 8 of the A string, and then going 5, 7, 9 on the D string, and then you're going fret 7 on the G, and then you're going 6, 8, 10, back to 6 on the B string. So that's, and then you just come all the way back down. So that's sort of the inverse of what we just did, where I'm playing a 1-3-1-3 pattern as opposed to 3-1-3-1 or something like that. So you can really mess around with the order of the notes here and try and do them in reverse directions, all that kind of stuff. Really, really challenging things. Now, the next thing to do in this series, if you've been following the rest of the videos, which again, I said at the beginning, really check those out because they are really important. The first thing to do with that is try and put in some of the patterns that we've covered. So let's say you take your 5-note pattern, something like this, all the other way around. So what I'm doing there is 9-7-5-7-5, 9-7-5-7-5. I'm taking that and I'm trying to put it in the middle of one of those patterns. So I'm just making that pattern even more difficult by putting a group of 5 in there on repeat. And here, instead of just going, I'm just going and doing that instead. So the whole thing is something like that. And again, the really important thing with this is think about it as 3-1-3 patterns into a group of 5. So we're thinking this pattern into some kind of group of 5. Or something like that. So that was groups of 4s into groups of 5. So we go 3-1-3, 4s, 5s. And then all the way back. And you could go back down a 3-1-3 pattern. Sorry. So. That's what I was aiming for at the start. But again, I'm sort of ad-libbing a lot of these things because they're supposed to be new. And that's a really important thing that I'm going to get onto in the next few videos is don't keep practicing the same old exercises. You take the concepts you've practiced from one idea and you shoehorn them into another idea. So in this case, we're doing groups of 3-1-3s into groups of 4s into groups of 5s. And you could equally do a Paul Gilbert idea in the middle of that and do something like, I don't know. And that's this. That Paul Gilbert pattern that we've covered in some of the Paul Gilbert videos, and putting that on the end of that idea. And then coming back down that 3-1-3 pattern. Equally, I could make this even more awful and do... And then try and find some way of doing a group of 5 off the end of this. So we could try and do... something like that, for example. You can make all of these exercises up yourself out of these ideas. And what happens when you do that is you get used to changing gears between groups of 5s, Paul Gilbert patterns, groups of 4s, groups of 3s, all the things that you might have practiced from the previous few videos. This is really, really important when it comes to actually developing a picking hand that works for improvisation. Because what most people have is some stupid fast ability to play groups of 6 that is always something they've practiced loads in the practice room. You know, there's this kind of classic thing, or something like that. And they can do that really, really fast. But as soon as you try and take them away from that pattern which they've practiced, their alternate picking completely falls apart. And the reason for that is because they don't practice in this way. There are no exercises here. You're making up your own using the concepts we've just done. So again, if I was to try and generate another one, let's say I just pick a concept. So I take, let's say I take the 3-1-3 pattern coming down and then into a group of 5. Or I do 3-1-3, and then from here, so into a group of 5 into a Paul Gilbert pattern. So we get something like something like that, for example, as a exercise, and you can just practice that on repeat for a while. But the idea is that you're constantly changing up every day or every week. You're changing up your exercises, so you're never just practicing the same lick and the same boring idea over and over and over and over again until you get it right. So while this might seem insane at first, it might seem incredibly difficult to put these things together in real time, it's well worth getting used to it and trying to deal with some of these more difficult exercises. Give all that a go and see how you do with it.